The summer sun burned golden over the quiet streets of the city, painting the apartment Ethan had worked years to buy in a warm glow. The air smelled of freshly cut grass and distant barbecues, a peacefulness he hadn't felt in months. Ethan ran his hand over the doorframe of his new apartment, the one place he thought was finally his. The thought of freedom was intoxicating until his phone buzzed. A message from his brother Mark. "We need to talk, your parents want to see you. They're upset." Ethan's stomach twisted. Mark had always been competitive, jealous, but this felt different. He remembered the harsh words, the cold betrayal, the way Mark had convinced their parents to kick him out 6 months ago. The memory of that night still burned, a scar beneath his calm exterior. He glanced at his girlfriend, Lila, who had been unpacking boxes with a bright smile. "Should I go?" he asked quietly. Lila shook her head, taking his hand. "No, this is your life now. They don't get to decide that anymore." But Ethan couldn't shake the unease crawling over him. Something told him this wasn't just about old grudges. It was bigger. That evening the knock on the door came, Mark and their parents, smiles plastered on their faces, hiding intentions Ethan couldn't yet read. The tension in the room was suffocating. "We just want to talk, Ethan," his father said, "about the house." Ethan froze. He had worked his ass off for that place. Every cent, every late night, every sacrifice, it was all his. And now, the people who had once driven him out of their home wanted it back. And just like that, summer's warmth turned cold, leaving Ethan standing at the edge of a storm he hadn't asked for, but couldn't avoid. The next morning, Ethan woke to sunlight slicing through the blinds, the warmth of summer feeling strangely oppressive. Lila was in the kitchen, brewing coffee, but even her comforting presence couldn't shake the unease from last night. He had tried to pretend it was just a casual visit, but the way Mark's eyes had lingered on his apartment, the way his parents had avoided looking him directly in the eye, it wasn't concern. It was calculation. Ethan's phone buzzed again, a text from Mark. "Can we talk tonight, alone?" Ethan's jaw tightened. Alone meant something more dangerous than words, something he didn't want to deal with yet, but he knew he couldn't ignore it. By evening, the air outside was thick and sticky, the city streets glowing with neon reflections off summer rain puddles. Ethan met Mark at a quiet, abandoned park at the edge of town. Mark's smile was too perfect. "I just want to understand, Ethan. Why did you have to buy that house without us? Why push us out?" Ethan laughed bitterly, the sound echoing off the empty playground. "I didn't push anyone out. I saved, worked, and bought my own home. You did this to me, Mark. You made sure I couldn't stay with our parents. And now, you want what's mine." Mark's smile didn't falter. "We just want what's fair." Ethan's heart pounded. He knew that smile. He had grown up with it. It meant trouble. It meant betrayal. Suddenly, from the shadows near the swings, a figure stepped forward. A stranger, but his presence was deliberate, watching. Ethan's instincts screamed. This was no longer just a family matter. Lila's voice rang in his mind. "They don't get to decide your life anymore." Ethan clenched his fists. This was bigger than a house, bigger than summer, and he had to be ready. The stranger from the shadows didn't move, just watched. Ethan's pulse quickened. He could feel the summer air tighten around him, sticky and suffocating. Something about the man didn't feel right. Mark leaned closer, lowering his voice. "Don't act like you don't know him, Ethan." Ethan froze. He did. The man was connected to old debts, bad rumors, things Ethan had tried to escape when he left his parents' house. "What do you want, Mark?" Ethan asked cautiously. Mark's grin was a knife. "We're just reminding you, that house of yours, it's not as safe as you think." A chill ran down Ethan's spine. Lila's voice echoed in his memory. "They don't get to decide your life anymore." But now he realized it wasn't just his family. There were shadows reaching in from outside too. The stranger finally stepped forward and the streetlight caught his face. A thin scar ran across his cheek. his eyes cold and calculating. "He's right, Ethan," the man said, voice low. "You've stirred things you can't handle." Ethan felt a flicker of panic, but then anger. Years of betrayal, of losing the only family he trusted, and now threats from strangers. He wasn't going to back down. He looked at Mark, his voice firm. "I earned everything I have. You can't take it, and if you try, I won't let you." Mark's eyes hardened, and for a brief moment, Ethan saw the brother he once knew buried beneath ambition and greed. But the stranger's presence made it clear. This wasn't about family anymore. As the summer night stretched on, Ethan realized the fight for his life, and the woman he loved, was only beginning. The summer morning was hot, the sun relentless on the streets of the city. Ethan returned to his apartment, feeling the weight of the previous night pressing on him like a heavy fog. Lila was waiting, her eyes searching his face. "They were serious, weren't they?" she asked softly, stepping closer. Ethan nodded. "More than I realized. Mark and that guy, they're not just trying to scare me, they want control. My house may be more." Lila's hand slipped into his, grounding him. "Then we fight together." Ethan swallowed hard, feeling the warmth of her touch, the summer air around them turning almost electric. For a moment, he imagined leaving it all behind, starting somewhere new with Lila. But he knew deep down he couldn't. This was his life, and he wouldn't let them take it. Later that day, Ethan began preparing. Locks were reinforced, cameras installed, every window checked. He moved like a soldier on the front lines of his own home. Each small action brought a mix of fear and adrenaline. As dusk fell, Mark called. "You should know, Ethan, you're not the only one fighting for what you want." His voice was calm, too calm, sending a shiver down Ethan's spine. Ethan clenched his phone. "I don't want to fight you, but I will protect what's mine." There was a pause, then a soft chuckle. "We'll see." That night, as Ethan and Lila sat on the balcony overlooking the city, the wind carrying the faint smell of summer rain, he finally let himself breathe. For a moment, he was just Ethan, and Lila, smiling in the golden hour light, was just Lila. But deep inside, he knew this peace was fragile. Lines had been drawn, and soon they would have to fight. The next morning, Ethan awoke to an eerie silence. The city felt different. The usual summer hum of life was gone, replaced by a sense of watchful eyes. He didn't notice the footprints on his balcony until Lila pointed them out, her voice barely a whisper. "Someone been here." Ethan's heart pounded. The locks had been reinforced, the cameras installed, but someone had found a way. His hands clenched around the railing. "They're testing me, trying to scare me." Lila wrapped her arms around him. "Then let's show them they picked the wrong person." Hours later, Ethan's phone buzzed with an anonymous message. "You can't hide what's yours. Step aside or pay the price." The words made his blood run cold. This was no longer a family squabble. This was war. Determined not to be intimidated, Ethan spent the rest of the day tracing clues, analyzing patterns, and setting traps. He discovered subtle hints left by Mark's associates. A dropped glove, a suspicious car parked too long. Someone was watching, learning his routines. That evening, as Ethan returned home, he saw Mark waiting outside, leaning casually against a car, an unnerving grin plastered on his face. "Enjoying the summer?" Mark asked. "It's beautiful but fleeting." Ethan didn't answer. He simply stepped inside with Lila, locking the door behind them, every sense on high alert. But just as he was about to breathe, a loud crash came from the kitchen window. Shattered glass rained down. Ethan grabbed Lila's hand. "Get behind me now." Summer's golden glow turned red in the sunset, painting their apartment in a cinematic blaze of tension and danger. The first strike had come, and it had come with a warning. Ethan's fight had only just begun. The apartment smelled of smoke and broken glass. Ethan knelt, inspecting the shards, his mind racing. Whoever had attacked wasn't careless. They wanted him rattled, scared, off balance. Lila sat on the couch, pale but steady. "Do you think it was Mark?" she asked softly. Ethan shook his head. "I don't know, but I know it wasn't random. Someone wants the house, maybe more, and Mark isn't acting alone." He pulled out his laptop, scanning old messages, tracing every detail. Each clue led to an uncomfortable realization. Someone close to him had been feeding information to Mark. Someone who knew the routines of his apartment, his schedules, Lila's habits. Ethan's chest tightened. The betrayal wasn't just in his family, it ran deeper. Hours later, as night draped over the city like a velvet curtain, Ethan and Lila sat on the balcony, the summer breeze brushing against their faces. The neon lights reflected in the distance, glittering like distant stars. Lila rested her head on Ethan's shoulder. "We've survived worse," she whispered. "We'll survive this too." Ethan tightened his arm around her, the warmth of her presence grounding him. But he couldn't ignore the truth. Whoever betrayed him had walked beside him for years, smiling as they handed his life over to Mark. He clenched his fists, a fire igniting inside him. "I'm not losing again," he murmured. "Not this time, not to anyone." From the shadows below, a figure watched, silent, unmoving, waiting. Ethan's summer of freedom was unraveling thread by thread, and the secrets threatening his life were closer than he ever imagined. The city streets shimmered under the summer rain, reflections of neon lights dancing across puddles. Ethan and Lila moved carefully, alert to every sound, every shadow. Mark's messages had become more direct. "You should have listened, Ethan. This doesn't have to get ugly." But Ethan knew better. With Mark, it would always get ugly. That night the confrontation came. Mark appeared at the entrance of Ethan's apartment building, flanked by two men Ethan didn't recognize. His smile was smug, arrogant. "You're making this harder than it needs to be," Mark said casually. Ethan stepped forward, Lila by his side, her hand gripping his tightly. "I'm done listening. The house is mine. My life is mine. You want it, you'll have to take it." Mark's grin widened. "That's the thing, little brother, we already started." Suddenly, one of the men lunged. Ethan reacted instantly, blocking the attack and throwing the man against the wall. Adrenaline surged through him as he realized the fight wasn't just about property, it was about survival. Lila, though terrified, grabbed a metal pipe from the stairwell, ready to defend him. Her eyes met Ethan's, and in that silent moment, no words were needed. They were in this together. The struggle was fast, chaotic, a blur of movement, shadow, and rain. Ethan's fists met resistance, but he pushed forward, fueled by anger, betrayal, and love. Mark watched, smirking, calculating. As the last man fell back, Ethan turned to face Mark. "Enough," he said, voice low and dangerous. "This ends tonight." Mark's eyes glinted with something darker than rivalry. "Oh, it's just beginning." The summer rain poured harder, drenching them, as the city seemed to hold its breath. The confrontation had begun, and neither side would back down. The morning after the confrontation, Ethan and Lila sat in the apartment, bruised and exhausted, but alive. The sunlight streamed through the windows, warm and golden, yet everything felt fragile, like the calm before a storm. "We can't keep doing this alone," Ethan admitted, running his hands through his hair. "Mark isn't just fighting for the house, he's trying to control everything I've built. Someone's helping him from the inside, and we don't know who." Lila's eyes narrowed. "Then we need allies, people we can trust." Ethan hesitated, thinking of the past betrayals. But he knew she was right. He made a call, a number he hadn't dialed in years. Someone from his old neighborhood, a friend who owed him loyalty and had connections to information networks, answered. By evening, the apartment was filled with quiet intensity. Ethan, Lila, and their new ally pored over maps, phone records, and security footage. Every detail mattered. Every pattern could reveal the identity of the insider helping Mark. As they worked, Lila leaned against Ethan, her shoulder warm against his chest. "Whatever happens," she whispered, We face it together." Ethan kissed her forehead, a brief but fierce promise. "Always I'll protect you, and the house, and us." Outside, the summer streets glowed under streetlights, and somewhere Mark watched. He knew Ethan was rallying support. He knew a storm was coming. But he also knew that storms could be unpredictable, dangerous, yes, but sometimes revealing. And for Ethan, the fight for his home had turned into a fight for everything he loved. Night fell over the city like a velvet cloak, the summer heat giving way to a sticky, restless tension. Ethan sat at the edge of his balcony, the skyline shimmering with neon and distant traffic. Lila joined him silently, handing him a cup of tea. "They're watching us," she said softly, her voice barely above the hum of the city. "I can feel it." Ethan nodded, eyes scanning the streets below. "It's not just Mark. Whoever's helping him knows our routines. They're patient, careful, and ruthless." Suddenly his phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. "Trust no one. The one closest to you isn't who they seem." Ethan's blood ran cold. He glanced at Lila. "It's not a bluff. Someone inside, someone we thought we could trust, is feeding them information." Lila squeezed his hand, fear and determination in her eyes. "Then we find out who it is before they strike again." Over the next few days, Ethan and Lila worked tirelessly. They monitored every visitor, every delivery, every call. Every shadow seemed suspicious. And as tension mounted, Ethan felt the weight of betrayal heavier than ever. One evening, while reviewing footage, a familiar figure appeared. Someone Ethan hadn't seen in months, someone he had let into his life and trusted. The camera caught them near his apartment building, moving with an ease that betrayed knowledge of the place. Ethan's fists clenched. "It's them," he said, voice low and dangerous. "They've been helping Mark from the start." Lila rested her forehead against his shoulder. "We can handle this," she whispered. "Together." Outside, the city pulsed with life, oblivious to the storm brewing in Ethan's world. And in that storm, secrets, lies, and danger lurked closer than ever, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. The summer sun had just begun to set, painting the city in streaks of orange and crimson. Ethan's apartment felt claustrophobic, the air thick with tension. The footage he had reviewed earlier replayed endlessly in his mind, the betrayal etched in sharp, undeniable clarity. It was someone he had considered a friend for years, someone he had trusted more than he should have. Their movements, their knowledge of the apartment, their subtle hints to Mark, all now undeniable. Lila noticed the change in him, the rigid set of his jaw, the storm behind his eyes. "Ethan, talk to me," she urged softly. Ethan exhaled, his voice tight with anger and hurt. "They've been feeding Mark everything. Every detail about this apartment, our routines, even you. I should have seen it coming." Lila's hand found his, grounding him. "Then we use it, we turn it against them." The plan was risky but necessary. Ethan and Lila spent hours crafting a counter-strategy, anticipating every move Mark and the insider could make. Summer's golden hour faded into night, and the city's neon lights became their battlefield. By midnight, they were ready. Ethan's heart pounded as he set the trap, each detail meticulous. This wasn't just about a house anymore. It was about justice, survival, and protecting the life they had built together. From the shadows, a figure watched Ethan move with precision and determination. The insider had no idea the walls were closing in, that their betrayal would soon be exposed. And as the summer night stretched on, Ethan realized one thing clearly. The closer the storm got, the stronger his resolve became. He wouldn't just survive. He would reclaim everything that was his and protect the woman he loved at all costs. The apartment was silent except for the faint hum of the city below. Ethan and Lila moved like shadows, hearts racing, nerves sharp. Every detail of their plan had been calculated, every entrance, every exit, every moment of vulnerability exploited. They waited. Minutes stretched like hours. Then, just after midnight, the insider arrived, confident, unaware. Their steps echoed softly in the hallway as they approached the apartment. Ethan's hand tightened around the baseball bat he'd hidden behind the door. Lila's fingers hovered over the phone, ready to alert authorities if needed. The insider reached for the doorknob. Ethan swung the bat, stopping them in their tracks. "Thought you could betray me and get away with it." His voice was cold like steel. The insider froze, shock flashing across their face. "Ethan, I—" "Save it," Ethan interrupted, stepping closer. "You thought you could help Mark take everything from me, from us." Lila emerged from the shadows, her presence fierce and unwavering. "You underestimated him," she said, voice steady. "And you underestimated us." The insider's resolve crumbled. They knew they'd been caught. They knew the tables had turned. Meanwhile, Mark's phone buzzed with frantic messages. He had been counting on the insider's inside information, but Ethan had anticipated everything. The trap wasn't just for the insider, it was for Mark too. By the time the sun began to rise, casting soft golden light over the city, Ethan and Lila had secured their home. The summer air, heavy and warm, finally felt safe again. But Ethan knew one thing: Mark wouldn't give up so easily. The battle wasn't over. The next morning the city was alive with summer's warmth, but Ethan felt a storm brewing under the sun. His phone buzzed relentlessly. One message stood out, a text from Mark, simple and chilling. "Last chance, give up the house or lose everything." Ethan's hands trembled, not with fear but with anger. He had fought too hard to be intimidated now. Lila noticed his expression and wrapped her arms around him. "We can handle this," she whispered. "Together." Ethan nodded, the weight of betrayal from his brother, the insider, and even his parents fueling a fierce determination. "This ends on my terms, not theirs." That evening Mark arrived in person. His presence was imposing, his voice smooth but edged with menace. "You've made things complicated, Ethan. I didn't want it to come to this." Ethan stepped forward, Lila at his side, eyes blazing. "You already did this. You pushed me out, tried to take my life, my home, my happiness. I'm not stepping down, not now, not ever." Mark's smile was thin. "Then prepare yourself." Suddenly, a sound of tires screeching and metal scraping echoed outside. Ethan's pulse raced. The threat was bigger than just Mark. It was the network, the people who had been pulling strings all along. In the summer twilight, golden and serene, the tension between brother and brother reached a breaking point. What had started as a fight for a house had grown into a battle for trust, love, and survival. Ethan clenched his fists, looking at Lila. "Whatever comes, we face it together." The city seemed to hold its breath. And in that quiet, Ethan realized that the hardest battles were not just outside, but inside, against betrayal, fear, and the love that had been tested at every turn. The following night, Ethan's apartment became a fortress. Reinforced doors, cameras, and traps were all ready, but nothing could replace the tension thick in the air. Mark had escalated, and Ethan knew this would be the decisive confrontation. Rain fell in heavy sheets outside, drumming against the windows like a warning. Ethan and Lila moved silently through their home, each step measured, hearts synced with anticipation and fear. Suddenly, the lights flickered. A shadow moved near the balcony door. Mark and two of his men had arrived, confident and menacing. "This is your last chance," Mark called, his voice carrying over the storm. "Give up the house or face the consequences." Ethan stepped forward, blocking the path to Lila. "You made your choice, Mark. Now deal with it." The fight erupted in a blur of movement. Ethan's fists met resistance. Lila swung a metal pipe with precision, and the apartment echoed with the clash of determination against betrayal. Every step, every block, every throw was choreographed instinctively, fueled by the desire to protect their home and each other. Amid the chaos, Mark lunged at Ethan. Their eyes met, brothers torn between blood and betrayal, but Ethan's resolve held firm. He overpowered Mark just enough to force him back, their conflict more emotional than physical. By the time the storm outside began to wane, Mark and his men were retreating, beaten and frustrated. Ethan stood, drenched, bruised, but victorious. Lila wrapped her arms around him, relief and love shining in her eyes. The summer air smelled of rain and victory. For the first time in months, Ethan felt a calm he hadn't known since leaving his parents' home. He had protected what mattered, and together they had survived. But even as the night faded, Ethan knew one truth. The battles of the heart, of trust and betrayal, were never truly over. The summer sun rose gently over the city, casting a soft golden light into Ethan's apartment. The chaos of the previous nights felt like a distant nightmare, but the bruises and broken furniture told a different story. Ethan sat on the balcony with Lila sipping tea, the warmth of the morning wrapping around them. Silence stretched comfortably between them, a rare peace they hadn't felt in months. "I can't believe it's finally quiet," Lila murmured, leaning her head on his shoulder. "I thought we'd never make it through." Ethan kissed her hair gently. "We did, together, and nothing, not Mark, not anyone can take this from us, not anymore." He pulled out his phone and saw messages from his parents. Surprisingly, they weren't demanding or angry. They were tentative, almost ashamed. They had seen the fallout of Mark's schemes, the lengths Ethan had gone to protect himself and Lila. After a long pause, Ethan sent a single message back. "I've moved on. I hope you find your own path too." No one else had to control his life. The house, the summer, Lila, everything he had fought for belonged to him now. As the day warmed, Ethan and Lila began fixing the apartment together, laughing as they repainted walls, replaced broken glass, and moved furniture. The simple acts of rebuilding felt like a metaphor for their lives, mending the broken, reclaiming what was theirs. That night they watched the city lights flicker in the distance, holding hands, hearts aligned. Summer was in full bloom, golden and endless, and for the first time Ethan allowed himself to feel hope. They had survived betrayal, danger, and family conflicts, but more importantly, they had survived together. The morning sun spilled over the city in brilliant streaks of gold, painting Ethan's apartment in warmth. The air smelled of summer flowers, rain-soaked streets, and a sense of new beginnings. Ethan stood on the balcony, Lila by his side, the city sprawling endlessly before them. After everything, the betrayal, the fights, the danger, they had finally found peace. "Feels like a dream," Lila whispered, her hand entwined with his. Ethan smiled, pulling her close. "No dream, this is real, us, our life. We built it together." Messages from his parents and Mark had stopped. They had seen the consequences of their actions, and while Ethan didn't harbor hatred, he had drawn his boundaries. His life, his home, and his happiness were no longer up for negotiation. Lila rested her head against his shoulder. "So, what now?" Ethan looked at her, heart full. "Now we live, we love, we take each day as it comes, and nothing, no one can take this from us again." The city outside buzzed with life, summer in full bloom. Ethan felt the warmth not just from the sun, but from the love and strength they had forged together. That evening, they hosted a small celebration with close friends, laughter echoing through the apartment that had once been a battlefield. Walls that had seen betrayal now witnessed joy, love, and the promise of countless summers ahead. As the night fell and the stars began to glitter, Ethan held Lila close. "We survived everything, and I wouldn't change a thing because it brought me to you." Lila smiled, tears in her eyes. "And I to you." The city slept beneath the golden glow of summer, and for the first time, Ethan allowed himself to feel truly at home. The storm had passed, and ahead lay endless possibilities, peace, love, and a future they had fought for together. The summer was theirs,